lettering pals. Wow, have we come a long way. You have learned all 26 letters of the alphabet, including uppercase and lowercase. And I asked you to write the names of everyone in your family or friends as a way to practice both your uppercase and lowercase together. Now, if you want to write someone a letter, you will need to know how to write punctuation, and to address an envelope, you will need to learn to write some numbers. So here goes. Make sure you have your handouts and your pencils sharpened. And you may pause this video until you're ready. Let's start writing numbers and punctuation. Did you know that you can refer to a keyboard to find all the numbers and all the punctuation marks and other glyphs that you need? Let's get started. All right, let's start by writing our name on our paper. You can write it at the very bottom inside the pencil, and we can be lettering with pencils today. We're going to start with the numbers here. And what I want you to notice is that the numbers are about 3/4, 2/3 to 3/4 of the size of the entire letter. So here's the baseline, here's the X height, and your numbers can be just going up to the X height. Now notice that some numbers, and these are the numbers that are odd, with the exception, not the number 1, but notice the numbers 3, 5, 7, and 9. What do they have in common? Well, they are all odd numbers, and they have tails that descend, not all the way down to the descender line, but about halfway. They descend below the baseline. Now, you don't have to write your numbers like this, but if you want to, this is a very traditional and stylistic way to do that. So I've created some space right under here so that you can write them. All right, so let's zoom in so you can write along with me. I'm going to start at that X height and come down and just follow that line to the baseline. And then again from the X height, come down and just make the slightest curve down and out. You want to make sure that you don't come out too far because you don't want it to be mistaken by the number 7. Now with the 2, we're going to start at about 1/3 of the space down from this X height, right on this line. We're going to come up and over and around and straight over. With the number 3, again, we're going to start at about the same place, and we want the top oval-like shape or ellipsis shape, partial ellipsis, to be smaller than the bottom. Now with the number 4, again, all the starts here are going to start up here at the top of the X height, come down at a 45-degree angle, almost to this other diagonal line. Now you can wait to do your cross if you want. I'm going to just do just like I did with the number 1 and come down and make that stem. And then I'm going to come over and cross, and you can make it straight or you can give it a little bit of a curve. I like to put my curve right at the end. Now with the number 5, we're going to start a little bit to the right of where our slope line and our X height intersect. And we're going to bring that back to this line so it just has the slightest angle, not as much as on the 4. And then notice that the bottom part of the 5 looks a lot like the bottom part of the 3. And it has a tail that goes below the baseline. Then we can just go straight across for that top crossbar. Now notice that the number 6 fits within this entire rectangle. Starting here, and it curves and spirals around. Now with the number 7, we're going to do a crossbar just like we did with the number 5, but it's going to start at 1 on the left and go to the right, and then come down at a bit of a curve and down between the baseline and the descender line. Now notice that the 6 and the 8, again, the 8 can go a little bit higher, or it can fit within that rectangle. We're going to start and come around like we're almost writing a lowercase s, and then come back up. And you can connect it, but sometimes I keep mine open. Now, great thing about an eraser is that if you make a mistake, you can try it again. Love writing with pencils. Notice I'm going to break this down and look at this example a little bit closer, that just like the number 3, the top part of the 8 is smaller than the bottom part of the 8. So you can actually imagine a snowman. And again, it's okay if you haven't warmed up yet. You can try this again and again till you get it just right, or to your liking. All right, so the number 9, again, it starts here in the upper right part of this rectangle, and we're going to make sort of a teardrop shape and then follow that slope line about halfway down between that baseline and the descender line like we did on the 7. And then with the number 0, imagine this is a clock face, and the top would be 12 o'clock, and then the next number over would be 1 o'clock. And I'm actually starting at about the 1 o'clock position. And I want you to notice that this number fits within the rectangle, and it's more narrow than the letter 0. So those are just a few of the guidelines for the numbers. Again, if you'd like, we can write the numbers to the side here, and you can make them so that the odd numbers are all fit within your X height and your baseline. So your number 3 can just fit within that space. It doesn't have to descend if you don't want it to. A variation on the 4, rather than it being a triangle, you can have it be upright, come over, and then have the stem. So you can have this part open. The 5, thinking about the 3, again, you can make it all fit within that rectangle if you want. The 6 is the same. The 7, to make it fit all within the rectangle, it's going to be a crossbar. And then this is going to come down a little bit at a diagonal and a curve if you'd like. But again, it doesn't have to break the baseline. So this is just a variation. You can choose how you'd like that to be. Your 8, your 9, and finally, the 0, and that can be more narrow. I started at the top there, but you can start at 1 o'clock. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get lazy, or if you kind of forget, if you start at the very top, oftentimes what will happen is you'll end up making a point at the top like that. And we want to stay away from that pointed top, or even an oval shape. An oval shape is more like an egg, where an ellipsis is going to be even if we were to dissect it in 4 parts. So those are your numbers and variations. Now let's go to the punctuation and the glyphs. And these are following what we have here on top of our numbers on our keyboard. I have pulled the ampersand out so we can do that separately, because it's a little bit more complicated. But here we have what's called a tilde. And oftentimes when we write it, we're writing it over the letter N so that it's an inye. And so it's a little bit higher than the X height. Sometimes we also use this symbol as an average symbol. So if you're writing an average, you would write this. Now this next symbol, you'll notice that if we were to write this over, say, a letter E, I'm going to write a 2-part letter E here, we would have an accent mark. And some accent marks go in this direction, some of them go in this direction, depending on what language you're writing in. So pay attention to those accent marks if you're ever writing in a different language. Now we've got an exclamation point that shows excitement at the end of a sentence. And then notice that the at symbol, oftentimes found in email addresses, notice that the oval part can kind of break the top and the sides, but at the bottom, it kind of is a little bit higher. Notice that the hashtag does that too. And we want that to just sort of hover above the baseline. And so we're going to start by writing a small a on the inside. And remember our branching, so our shape that we're writing here. And then we're going to come down and around and try to keep it pretty tight if you can. Now with the hashtag, or this can also be seen as the pound symbol. So if you're at the grocery store and you're thinking about how many pounds of something you're buying, you're going to write this so you can follow about 3/4 of the way down, make this one parallel, and then make your crossbar and your second crossbar parallel as well. Now, remember, these are a little bit smaller than what we wrote our letters, but if you'll notice that the $sign can be a little bit bigger. And so notice it's a little bit taller, not quite as tall as the ascender line, but think of this as like the letter T. And again, we can do the snowball or the snowman style. And you could draw a line through here. I actually like to draw it at the top and then hover and then draw it at the bottom, because otherwise it gets really busy inside of there. And now we have the percentage symbol. So again, you're going to draw a couple of, actually I might start at the top and then I'll draw this diagonal from one side to the other. And at the bottom, I'll draw the other ellipsis. Now there's lots of different names for this, but what I like to call it is the caret. And I will imagine myself drawing an upside down V starting at the center in the middle between these two slope lines and bring it down to the intersection here, these lines. Sometimes this is used on computers to show that there's, if you click that, there might be a drop-down menu or an up menu. It could also be another accent mark like the inye or the tilde and these marks. And then we have the asterisks. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this, and I think that the simplest way to draw this would be to go horizontal with this line and then draw an X. Some people draw 4 lines. I like to draw 3 because otherwise it gets really busy. Okay. And then we have the parentheses. So this is what goes inside of a sentence when we have an extra thought and we want to make sure that it's captured in a different way. And notice the relationship of these two. Now they both start and end on the slope line, but they come out on a curve and they mirror one another. And if you're right-handed, the left parenthesis is much easier to write than the right. And if you're left-handed, the left one might feel awkward, but the right feels more comfortable. Why? Because our hands go in this motion. Now, next we have what's called the hyphen, the in dash, and the m dash. Now, when do we use these symbols? I'd love to show you what that means. So hyphens, notice that it goes across, it's at the top of the X height, and it goes across, but not all the way, about 3/4. So hyphens are used in all compound numbers like 21 through 99 if you were to write those out, and in hyphenated words. Now, the next one is called an in dash. Now, why is it called an in dash? Because it's the entire width of the letter N. And the in dash is to show ranges of any kind. So if you were going to show numbers, so if I said 21. So if I were writing the word 20, and then I would have a hyphen 1. For an in dash, if I wanted to show, say, 21 through 36, this would be slightly longer than my hyphen. And then the M dash, which is 2 rectangles wide, is because it's the width of an M. So we call this, and it's spelled N-E-N and M-E-M dash. And M dashes are used instead of commas, colons, semicolons, and parentheses. So sometimes if we're writing a sentence and then we have a different thought, and then we kind of want to end that thought with a period, we would put down an M dash. Okay, I know that's a little advanced and a little strange, but as you get older and start doing more writing and creative writing and maybe writing for school, you're going to come across these different punctuations throughout. Now, let's get to some math glyphs. So just like our @ and hashtag symbol, our plus and equal signs are going to be slightly smaller. So our plus sign is going to be inside of the rectangle following those slope lines, but it's not quite as tall. It's again going to take about 2/3 or 3/4, and then we'll go straight across perpendicular line to create the plus symbol used for addition. And then if you wanted to do subtraction, we didn't talk about it here, but it would be the same height. So it would be a little bit lower. So if our numbers were between here, 2 plus 1, and then maybe -0. We're getting into some complex things. And then when we have the equal sign, our equal sign is going to be that crossbar, but it's going to be slightly above and slightly below to say equal. So what would 2 plus 1 minus 0 be? It would be 3. Okay, enough math. Let's go ahead and do the brackets. Now these brackets are used, again, notice that they are parallel or symmetrical to each other. They mirror one another. So if we follow, I'm just going to follow just outside of the slope line here, and then we just have a little bit comes over, so it doesn't even fill an entire rectangle. So these are often used somewhat like parentheses, but oftentimes used when you're doing playwriting and things like that, where you're showing instruction, but it's not really another thought. It's not really part of what's being read. It's sort of like she sneaks in through the back door, and those would be in brackets. And these are called curvy brackets, or sometimes called fancy brackets. And they're kind of fun to write and a little bit of a challenge. And so what you might want to do is trace over what I've made for you here. And you can do that with any of the numbers, letters, or glyphs. Trace over. And notice that this little piece that comes out, so this feels sort of like an S going this way and then a backwards S. It's going to be below the X height, so it's sort of in the middle. We're going to come this way, and then we're going to mirror that going the other way. Oops, not always perfect. That's okay. And then they're going to mirror one another. There you go. Curvy brackets. All right, now let's go to some more of these other symbols. And we've got a backslash. This could be considered upright. This is really a backslash and a forward slash. And these are all, actually this one's straight up and down. It almost looks like it's going backwards because of that slope line. But this truly is a straight up and down line. And then we have a slight forward slash. This can also be considered just an upright line, just like this, depending if you're writing at a curve or not. Then we've got a backslash, which it's going to take up this entire rectangle from your A-center line down to your baseline. That's a backslash. So that's often used in URLs, right? URLs or websites. And then we have forward slash. And sometimes people get these mixed up. They might just say backslash, but this is back because it goes backwards. This is forward because it goes forward. Now we end our sentences with periods, and notice that that little period just lives right on top of the baseline. And then our comma is like a period, but then it has a little tail that comes around. And then notice our colon, that lives inside, right between the X height and the baseline. But the semicolon, oftentimes, the bottom part, which is a comma, sometimes it's lower. Now we have, this would be an apostrophe. And then the next one, and these look like commas, but they live up here. Because if you were to have, say, a word like that's like a conjunction like it's or won't, this is where that would live. And then if you have two of them, this would be your quote mark. And then we have less than and greater than. So what do I mean? So if you were to have numbers say 1 is less than 3, 3 is greater than 2. So again, these are a little bit higher up because they're going to be along with the numbers. And they are going to mirror one another. So however you write the first one, you're going to mirror your second one. And you can do it all in one line, or you can break it up in two. And then we have the question mark. And so again, if you'd like, because sometimes when we have what's called a compound curve, that's a line that curves one way and then the next, it can be a little bit of a challenge to write. So you can trace this one up here. Notice that it's about a rectangle wide, and then it comes around and ends, so that you've got some space down here to write a period. Now, my very favorite glyph is called the ampersand, also known as the and symbol. And what I've done here is, if you were to like, oh, how do I even begin to write that? Where do I start? Notice that I've broken it down into 3 strokes. So you can write these strokes independently. And after you write all 3, you might say, uh-oh, let's start over. Let's go ahead and draw 3/4 of the size. So it's going to start between the X height and the ascender. And it's going to look like sort of like a backwards, narrow, leaning back C. And then we're going to connect it. So you can kind of trace over what you drew here with this curvy line. And it almost looks sort of like a funny vase. And then you can do, this looks sort of like the tilde. You can do a tiny tilde right there. It's this little curved line. And notice with the ampersand, again, the top is smaller than the bottom. The top is sort of like an upside down tear shape. And the bottom almost looks like a backwards leaning D. And if you were to go online and search ampersand, let me go ahead and write this for you. I don't know if I can write it in this space. I'll write it a little bit smaller. Ampersand. If you were to go online and search this, you are going to find hundreds, if not thousands of variations. So enjoy looking at these different types of ampersands, design your own, and have fun playing with ampersands. And when you do, just notice how a lot of times the ampersand looks sort of like an E. I've drawn this one really big, connected to a letter T. Almost like etc. Etc. means and more. And persand means and more. Ampersand. So check out these different and symbols. I'll draw another one. This is one of my favorites. It's like a backwards 7 with a little C that has a big tail. I love drawing that one. That's one of my favorites. And sometimes people get really kind of lazy and they'll draw sort of like an and symbol that almost looks like a little T. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed the ampersand, also known as the 27th letter of the alphabet. It's a combination of the letters E and T and means and. Now, remember how we sing the ABC song, it ends with X, Y, and Z? That's why it was known as the 27th letter of the alphabet. Now, there are variations of those ampersands that are endless, so have fun looking at those. And I'll see you in the next video where I talk about how to make practicing your lettering efficient and fun.